So if you feel like you're battling CPTSD, do you feel like you also struggle with addictions? CPTSD and addictions can kind of go hand in hand. And one of the main causes of addictions oftentimes is shame. And so not only does shame cause you to have addictions, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a second, but not only does it cause you to have addictions, but then the addictions can cause you to have more shame. And so now you're spinning from the addiction to the shame pushing you to the addiction, and you're stuck in this shame addiction trauma loop. And by the way, when we hear addictions, we tend to think of substance abuse. And obviously, that's definitely a form of addiction. But there's also behavioral addictions. And so, just to mention some of them, it could be gambling, it could be risky sex, it could be the internet, constantly scrolling on social media, it could be binge watching TV shows. Some other behavioral addictions could be binge eating, it could be shopping, playing video games. So, if you struggle with CPTSD, which oftentimes underneath all of the layers of CPTSD, there's often a shame wound. And that shame wound is what makes us susceptible to addictions. So I want to share with you guys something that was really helpful for me when I was working through my own behavioral addictions. Something that I learned was the fact that if we struggle with addictions, it's often a sign that something inside of us doesn't feel safe. There's something in our nervous system, something in our limbic network, the areas of our brain that control our emotions, that doesn't feel safe. And so depending on our trauma response, right? If we're fight or flight, then our limbic network often will go into hyperactivity, anxiety. It will be overactivated. And so what we'll tend to do is look for a downer. The body will do something, look for something outside of self to try to establish that safety in some way, shape, or form to bring that overactivation down. Now, if we're really down, then our body might automatically crave an upper. And so why does the body do that? Why does the body choose to seek outside of self something that will bring it up or something that will bring it down when it's struggling with strong, intense emotions or feeling overwhelmed with emotional pain? Well, the reason is because oftentimes if we've been through trauma, if we have CPTSD, then oftentimes we lived in an environment where we didn't feel safe. If we had to deal with childhood trauma and the trauma was outside of self, right? The trauma was because of a toxic environment. It was because of emotionally unavailable parents, narcissistic parents. It was outside of self. And what does a child do when they don't feel safe? They try to establish safety outside of self. Why? Because they don't have the emotional maturity to create safety from within. They can't. They have to first learn it outside of self so that they can internalize it and then be able to have that felt sense of inner safety. Well, if that's our past and we have a history of not feeling safe in our environment because of childhood trauma, if we haven't healed those wounds, we can still be stuck in the coping strategy that we had in childhood, which was try to get it outside of self. And that's where the addictions come in, right? We're overactivated. We have so much anxiety. We're so stressed. The body's like, I need something outside of self. The areas of our brain that are not in our prefrontal cortex, they're not in our thinking areas of our brain that make these decisions. So they're like, well, that strategy helped us in the past, in the sense that we're still alive. So the strategy of getting safety outside of self must work. So let's find something that can help us to either come up or come down. So when we understand this, we understand that it's not just a matter of willpower. It's really about retraining ourselves on how to have that inner sense of safety that we should have learned about or learned how to have in childhood. If we don't establish that inner sense of safety, that inner sense of really being in tune with ourselves, in tune with our body, to know when our nervous system is overactivating or underactivating and know how to comfort it and know how to show up for ourselves, then it doesn't matter the amount of willpower we have. It doesn't matter the amount of things that we try to do outside of self to stop the addiction. We will always be struggling, and oftentimes losing the battle because our inner template is just designed to keep those coping strategies alive until we upgrade those coping strategies. And that's one of the things that I'm really trying to incorporate into Thriver School of Transformation is not just learning about trauma, learning about what happened, although that's a huge part of it, right? Because just like a puzzle, you don't know what the picture is until you have all the pieces and you can see it and you can evaluate it and then you know what it is. Well, it's the same thing with trauma. Oftentimes we need to understand certain aspects of it, but we also then have to embody the healing part. And so when it comes to feeling safe within, we have to learn, we have to understand safety, but we can't think our way through it. It's not going to work. Have you ever been really activated or really triggered and your body is full of all of these uncomfortable sensations and your mind and your thoughts are trying to calm the body down and you're like, calm down, you're safe, you're safe, you're safe. And your body's like, liar, liar, liar. And it doesn't listen to you, right? Because words are not what the body understands. We have to embody that sense of safety from the inside. So if you're struggling to do this, I want to invite you to the Thriver School of Transformation, because as we're on this healing journey, that's what we do. We do exercises that help us to really be in our body, to learn how to reestablish a relationship with self, because CPTSD and childhood trauma causes us to separate from ourselves, right? And to focus outside of self to try to have safety, to try to make sure we're okay by making sure everyone else around us is okay. And we're not even there for ourselves. So a lot of the recovery is really about coming home inside of self. And that's what we're going to be focusing on more of in the Thriver School of Transformation. And in the last meeting, I took a poll to see what type of meeting people would like more of, whether it was parenting after abuse or doing more somatic experiencing, where we start really getting into our felt sense and working through anxiety, working through stress on the body level. And guess what won? At this moment, more people were interested in really working through the trauma on the body level. So I'm adding that meeting. I'm going to be adding a meeting to Thriver School of Transformation that focuses on exercises that help us to relearn how to connect with self, to be in our felt sense, because when we can help ourselves to feel safe from within, so many things that we struggle with start to lessen and dissipate. So if you're still struggling, make sure you check it out.